Thank you, Austin.
So today we are going to talk about the initial steps of writing an offer. Pretty exciting stuff.
Are you guys excited? How many have written an offer? Awesome. I have. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Go ahead and set it.
Yeah. Do you want me to hand it out now or do you want to wait? Now?
Maybe if it's in front of it, it's easier.
Okay.
Okay.
I created a cheat sheet for you guys. Follows in line with the purchase agreement. So what questions do you need to ask? This is a one just that you guys have here printed. It will be in the Slack channel after the class today, so that you can go in and download the PDF at any time.
How you want?
No. So you can go in and download it and print one, use it, right? Every time you go to write an offer until you get that down as a memorization tool, I need to write an offer. Questions, right?
So is that maybe like in the workshop channel?
Yes, in the workshops.
Okay.
Anything that is in the workshop classes will be in the workshop channel. But there is a way that you can go in and you can search for forms, documents,
Okay.
and then you can just type in the word. And this will be probably buyer questions or offer questions. Okay?
So,
I'm gonna sit too.
yeah, why don't you sit down? So, I think the key to being a good real estate agent and a broker is getting to know your clients so you know what it is they need. So you gotta do a little prying a little bit. You gotta ask them what they want to use the property for. But this is a great place to start as you are trying to figure out what terms are important in the offer, right? So we're gonna go through this really quick. Should we pull it up?
Open sales agreement? Sure.
Is that mouse mobile what it reaches for?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Let me share screen.
All right, so who are the buyers and what will their legal names be? This is super important. So obviously you have to make sure you're spelling their names correctly because that's going to be recorded on the deed. And you also don't want to insult them by misspelling their names. So don't be afraid to ask them. Like I always think, like for me personally, if I'm working with somebody and like let's say I'm the shopper or I'm the consumer, and someone asks me questions that may seem tedious, but it's to get it right, like how do you spell your name? Like even if I've given it to them before, it's important to get this stuff right. So I think it shows a lot of care and a lot of attention to detail when you get into these kind of, into the minutia a little bit, like how do you spell your name? This is super important that it gets recorded right, okay? Also, they could be purchasing the property as a trust, right? So they don't want to have their name on it, they want to be purchasing it underneath the trust. So there are two separate sections. So at the top here, right here is where their names will get inserted. But if we go all the way down to the name, so we could actually put their name like Kelly Diaz right here. And then if you go all the way down to the end. If you go all the way down to the end right here, it's like deed or contract be prepared in the name of, what if this is where I can put my trust? So the Kelly Diaz will go to the trust. Okay?
Oh, that could be different.
It could be different.
Yeah, so that's a different question on this sheet.
Yep, yep.
And it's down. These questions are in order to just scroll through the
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I just jumped that word.
I have a question for the trust.
You don't want to confuse them.
My last client wants to have the trust.
Mhm.
But then the escrow officer said they can't close the trust or the loan.
The loan may not, the loan probably needs to be in the name. If it's a loan, they probably need to be in the name of people. They may be able to record it after the fact into the trust. So it may be a two-part process where they have to close it, they have to say again after later. Because the lender may want to see it in their name, and then later you can bring it to the trust. Yeah. So that's good. That's a very good point. So maybe only the cash sale can go directly into the trust. Yeah. The other thing is also when this isn't on the list, but one of the things you need to prepare for is look into the RMLS and make sure you have the seller's names correctly. There's an option in zip forms to where you can auto-populate from the MLS. But a lot of times, so if you go into the MLS tax document,
Want me to do that?
the names are not input properly. So on the house you own, like mine, for instance, it would say Diaz Kelly, not Kelly Diaz, right? So if you do the auto populate from the zip forms, it's gonna pull that information as Diaz Kelly, not Kelly Diaz.
The last name first.
Right, and so you look, and it's a pet peeve to me, it's like you're presenting an offer to purchase someone's house, but you can't even spell the name right, like, that doesn't show a lot of care and detail. If I'm a listing agent, I'd look at that and be like, I don't like this, I don't like this is someone who's taking shortcuts, I don't wanna work with someone who's making shortcuts. But when you're presenting this offer, like, asking these questions, filling out this form, presenting it to a seller, like, you're talking volumes about who you are as an agent, and the time and care you take to write this offer out, to make sure it's precise, make sure it's correct. So like you're talking about, you know, what's the median price? What's the median price last month here? $580,000? Or
No, it's 600 and, it's 609 for the year so far at our office, but, for the month, I think it was like almost 690.
that's a lot of money, right?
That's the app.
Like, that's a
Average
lot of
sales
money,
price for our
and you can't
office.
take the time to get the information right. Like, this is the most expensive thing someone's buying, so you guys gotta make sure you guys are paying attention, make sure your details are right, okay? So, but in the RMLS, if you pull up any house,
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying.
yeah, you're right.
Clear. 700 million. Area.
So you generally don't just,
I would never use the auto populate.
Yeah.
I would never, because I don't like auto populates, because I think it creates bad habits. Like, I think you should be paying attention to each field in the form. There's some parts like in zip forms where you can auto populate like your company name or your license number, that sort of, I kind of get that stuff maybe, because maybe you get it right once, you don't have to get it right again, maybe that's better. But relying on someone else to put the information in accurately that you're going to then auto populate, I don't like that at all, right? Okay, so example right here,
Click on the tax.
click on the tax ID there and see how the names come up. It's Labs Maxine Roberta,
This is the last name's always first.
Yeah. so it's Roberta Maxine Labs probably.
Maxine over the left.
Yeah, so you can always call the listing agent and ask if they've auto populated, that's what you see in the listing ID, the listing itself is everything. Okay, so.
And sometimes it gets cut off if there's more than one, if it, you know, if it's
mhm.
husband, wife, and an LLC or a trust, it'll
Yeah.
get cut off.
If they're a nationality you're not familiar with the names on it, just call the listing agent. Make sure you get it right, because you're presenting it. Don't offend anybody by not getting the names on it. So simple phone call, get that straight. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is probably like the most germane thing, right? What price do they want to purchase a home for, right? Pretty important. In this market, we're also probably talking about escalation clauses perhaps. So what price do you want to offer? Or you can use an escalation clause, then how much is that escalation clause going to be to how much more over the next highest offer do you want to offer? Those are conversations you should be having.
what's the next?
An escalation clause is a term that says, I'm willing to pay $5,000, and I'm just throwing a number out, $5,000 more than the next highest offer, up to $600,000, or up to whatever that number is. So it allows you to have a kind of a sliding offer price based on competition. So if you want to win it, but you don't want to overpay for it, this is a great option to use.
So I have a couple questions about that. Is that all right? So the two that we've written
Mhm.
together, we used an escalation clause in both of them.
Yep.
I've become aware that some agents really don't like that. Sometimes you see in the listings that they won't,
Yep.
they don't
Well-
want any in their offers.
So they can't actually do that.
They
They
can't.
can tell you they don't like it, but they can't refuse to get it.
Yeah, and if they refuse to present it, then they're really like,
That's interesting, because
They-
I've seen a couple recently. One said no letters and no escalation
the
clause.
no letters
The
thing,
no letters, yeah.
you don't have to present the letter.
It's effective actually January 1st, but it used to-
Yeah, I don't think you have to present the letter, but I think you do have to present the offer. If I don't want to present escalation clauses, but I get one, I gotta present it. It's part of the offer.
Uh-huh.
Like as real estate agents, they don't pick and choose the terms that they want people to write towards, right? They just can't. So,
And then my other question is, and it's apropos to the next one I'm gonna write in a little while. When somebody sees an offer at listing price
Mhm.
with an escalation clause, maybe considerably higher, which both of ours were.
Yeah.
Is that first impression that you're offering, buyer A is offering, that listing,
I don't think it makes much
and
difference.
buyer B is already,
I don't think that makes a ton of difference because, I mean, you're bidding against, you could end up bidding against yourself. So if you go above, if you start above that listing price, you're bidding against yourself. Like that, the initial number is not that important, right? It's the final two numbers on the escalation
okay, so the
clause.
first impression, because first impressions in some ways are important. You pick up the offer, you look at it the first time.
But we can control which documents they look at first. You could order it so that the escalation clause is the first document they see.
Oh.
But the thing is that if they're meeting in person, the seller's agent is gonna dictate which form goes
Yep.
first. So if they're doing it all like virtually, then you can kind of dictate which form goes first by the order in which you sign them.
Mhm.
But if you include them all together, if they're separate documents, then they're gonna look at them as they're, how would they look at it?
Mhm.
You have no control over that. But again, they have to present the whole thing. They can't just present what they want.
Pick and
They have to
choose.
present the whole thing, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have another question.
Mhm.
I've seen another listing that was willing to do Zoom buyers bidding war.
Hmm.
I don't know what it's called, but it's like having all the bidders on Zoom.
Huh.
So how
Well,
do we manage that?
I will think that is probably illegal.
Is it legal?
Yeah, well, you have to have an auctioneer's license,
Yes.
that's an auction, if you don't have an auctioneer's license, then they can't do it. So I would be like, do you have an auctioneer's license?
Oh,
Because, yeah, I think that's actual license, auction,
Yeah.
I think you can't, I don't think you can just do that, so, I don't guess it.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So for the escalation clauses, you still have to alert, the buyer if they go over the amount, even though they already put it in.
right, so in the escalation clause, there's, is language, in our particular one, there's a bunch of them that go around, it's not just one, right? We've created one, the Hassan Company, they have one that they use, it's the same wording every time, but it's just on the set, it's on an OREF addendum. You're gonna see companies, there's tons of them, right? It's not like an OREF form necessarily, there's no OREF escalation clause form. Washington has a system form, Oregon does not, so we all make our own offices. And typically, it calls for an addendum announcing the price or a counteroffer that announces the final purchase price. And also, usually they require some sort of proof of the offer price, so you know. And there's also language in there talking about like net offer, things that are like non-contingent offers, so that so it is a more comparative, it's like if you have an offer that's contingent upon the sale of 7 houses, right? And that's a lot different than an offer that's not contingent upon the sale of the house, so it kind of differentiates between those.
I'm sorry to ask him.
No, don't ask, these questions are what everybody needs to learn, so this is great.
But why wouldn't you just put an escalation clause in every offer? Because you have the potential to pay less.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
yeah, absolutely,
Especially in today's market,
absolutely,
Fair enough.
right?
Yeah.
some buyers don't.
But some buyers don't want to share what their highest and best is.
but that's up to us, so I would, anytime a buyer would say that to me, I'd be like, no, that's up to us, like, we just have to draw a line, we just have to negotiate. So if they come back to us with a number that's too high, if they just see your number and try to hit you with it, you can just say, well, what about the escalation clause? Well, we're not using the escalation clause. Well, then I don't think I want to accept that price, because if they had the offer that was gonna push it to that price, they would have presented it.
Right.
Right? The only reason they would push you up above price is because they don't have the competition to get it there.
And if
So-
they use the escalation clause,
Yeah.
they have to give you the front page with the names crossed out, showing you what the offer price is. Or if there's another escalation clause, showing you that yours is not as high as that.
Ours actually is just the entire offer. It's not just the front page, just the entire offer, no redactions on that.
Right.
Yeah, it's just the entire thing, so. Yeah. It's nice to redact it. I would never reject a redacted one, but it's not actually worded as redacted in our offer. In our escalation clause. It was one that was here before I had, and I had to change it because
You changed it, okay,
I had to change it. It was Mike's old one, and I just left it with that one.
okay.
And it says the offer, and it's the same redactions, and it's just,
We always sent it.
yeah, it is fine to redact. If I'm representing a seller, I'm representing a buyer, and I got a redacted one, I wouldn't look at it. because it's like, there's so much fraud involved, like if you created a fake offer in this situation.
Very
somebody-
true.
Somebody wanted to create a fake offer and present it, there's so much fraud.
To push your
So
offer up.
just, yeah, it'd be so much, like jail time, like that's criminal, right? So you can't just do that and get away with it, like you're going to jail. Seller would go to jail, seller's agent would go to jail, that's not just like, losing your license for 3 days, that's fraud.
Well, the key on that is you do see who the agent is at the very bottom of the zip forms.
I always redact that, if it, yeah, as a
you
seller's
do that
agent, I would
too,
redact,
right?
I would redact all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, next big important question is, what would they like to put down for their earnest money? Okay, 1% is pretty typical. I've seen it going up though in this real estate market. People are doing 2% pretty often. Earnest money is the money that the seller would retain if the buyer were to breach the contract. So, and it can only be, it's supposed to be an amount that would be enough to make the seller whole if you weren't to purchase the property. So let's say it's a $500,000 house and you made $200,000 earnest money. That's probably more than the seller actually would have damaged. They wouldn't actually get to keep that much money. Okay. If you ever would to fight it, it's supposed to make them right. You can't just come up with exorbitant amount of money. We had one where we had a $3 million deal and somebody wanted to do $1 million in earnest money. But no, that's
Ooh,
it's not gonna happen. Yeah. Okay. Personal property, the appliances, this is a big one, right? So we're going through the listing, if you're showing a house, you should be making note of what appliances you see. Maybe you can point them out to the client if you want. They're not always included, but it seems to me, I don't see a lot of counter offers on appliances. I see people being pretty willing to get rid of their refrigerators and stuff, because no one wants to do that crap. So you see people pretty willing to leave that stuff in place. Washers, since washer and dryers have gotten nicer, people ask for them now. It used to never be a thing until they, cost $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 for a pair, now people ask for
it
it.
takes 6 months to get.
Yeah, and now it takes so long to get into it. Right, it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So keep note of that. There's some good, you kind of want to be as precise as you can about what they are. Like you don't have to do model numbers or brand names. But if there's a fridge in the kitchen and the fridge in the garage, you need to differentiate between the two. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with a garage fridge, not a kitchen fridge.
Yeah.
If it's a freestanding range, make sure you write that in. That's an easy one.
Details.
Yeah, details.
And you need that information to decide how much earnest money.
No,
No,
that's not,
this is going down,
this is-
there's a section first up here.
this is the next, yeah, well.
Oh,
Yeah,
my bad.
No, ours.
So we're into section 2 and 3 here.
Personal property, so if there's anything that they absolutely do not, or that they don't want to pay, right?
Yeah, so section 2 is usually something that's not dictated by the buyer. Maybe there's a chandelier or something somebody's attached to. A lot, I see the chandeliers would be the biggest one. Sometimes you see chandeliers or artwork, like
Rose bushes.
rose bushes, garden art, something that somebody's attached to. You'll see something noted in the listing usually, exclude such and such from the sale. So you want to pay attention to that and have a conversation with your buyer about it. Say, hey, they would like not to leave the nude bust of the whatever out in the garden, with water coming out of its ears. Do you want that? And then they say, probably say, no, I don't want that. Right? So, or it's a chandelier that was grandma's chandelier. So have a conversation with them about that so you can exclude that. And then the next one, section 3, is the personal property they do want to keep.
Would you consider adding like the brand name of the refrigerator? 'Cause
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. Like Devil's
So they don't
Deep-
switch it.
Yeah.
I heard someone in Michigan, a realtor that I know, they switched it out for a lower model, but it was stainless steel. So-
Yeah.
And she only knew because the model was different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's smart. Language people use is as seen on the property with such and such date. So if they switch it out, that's kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of, hey, wait, you have to prove that it's different, but listing photos are great for that too. But, yeah,
Hot tub would go in section 2.
yeah, hot tubs.
You said-
If they do take a chandelier, are they required to replace it with something, or is it like?
They're not required to.
They're not required.
Make sure
So
you
if
make a turn.
them
You might make
Replace
a
it with
turn.
something.
Right.
You find a turn, like something,
It's obviously then that's like what electrician to install.
right, totally, right.
Right.
So, you're talking about, it could be depending on the chandelier, right? Could be tens of thousands of dollars, could be $1,000, $300, could be whatever the fixture could be, right? So you want to have a contingency in place for, not like a rate contingency, you need to have a plan in place for what they're gonna replace it with.
We've touched on this before, but I don't remember the answer. So I was just thinking that it might be useful to take a photograph of the refrigerator, washer, dryer. But are you allowed to do that when
Yeah.
you're touring a home
Absolutely,
without asking
absolutely.
the seller's agent? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm so aware that as good as I am at the details, after I've looked at several houses, going, did that one have a washer and dryer?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, totally, that's a good idea.
Uh-huh.
Play this line, so I can't read that. I just can't remember if the verbiage in here already mentions that it's at zero value or is that?
Yeah,
verbiage
so-
right
Right, it's at no value,
No value.
no stated value. And why does it say no stated value? Something
here?
wrong?
Not negotiate personal property.
So it doesn't get knocked off the value of the house.
Right, so the lenders, they don't want it,
Lenders
they don't
don't
want it
want
on a refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
So if it's part of the sale,
sale.
but with no stated value, that's fine, but if that's a stated value, the lender would probably say, okay, well, now I want 600, your loan can be only, can only be, 20%, plus the $600 you're gonna pay, did that, because they're not in the refrigerator financing business. So, but that's. Okay,
Financing.
this is important, okay, but we didn't talk about down payment. Let's talk about down payment.
Back up.
Yeah, let's back
What are
up.
you skipping?
We didn't, I didn't. Do we even go through one? Was there?
Down
Oh, there it
payment.
is. I did. I skipped number 4. Sorry, guys. So number 4, down payment. All right. So obviously this is pretty easy. How much you put down? So that's going to be the earnest money is going to come out of that. So if they're putting 20% down, and they're doing 1% earnest money, then the remainder of the down payment would be 19%. So let's keep the math simple. 20% on $500,000. So using $5,000 in earnest money, earning the 20% of that of the purchase price is 100,000. Subtract the 5,000 you've already included in earnest money, you make 95. And then the next line below that is E, where the loan amount is, and so that's
It'll auto-populate.
Yeah.
We're gonna actually write these out. You're gonna
Next
write offers tomorrow or on Thursday.
yeah. Good. Okay. All right, so let's go down to 4, balance of purchase price. So another question to ask them, where is their down payment coming from? Is it gift funds? Is it money they have in a savings account? Is it tied up in the stock market? Is it a 401k? Is it a CD? These are things you have to disclose.
Is it a home to sell?
Is it a home to sell? That's a big one, right? That's something you definitely want to know. So right here, it says, buyer has liquid available funds and for the earnest money deposit and the down payment. And if all the cash transaction, the full purchase price sufficient to close the transaction described herein is not relying upon any contingent source of funds from loans, gifts, sale, closing, or other property, 401k disbursement, et cetera, as follows. So this is where you would say, if it's in like an investment account, or 401k, down payment from a 401k investment account. It's not liquid. It's not sitting in a savings or checking account. Then you need to disclose where it's coming from. Otherwise, if for some reason the sale fails, the buyer could lose their earnest money because they didn't disclose where that money was coming from.
And sometimes it could take longer to get it,
Right.
right? And so that needs to be known ahead of time.
Or if the market crashes, let's say tomorrow the market crashes and your 401k was worth 100, now it's worth 50. Like that can happen, right?
Okay, so only what is not liquid.
Only when it's not liquid. Yep. So if it's in a checking or savings account, it doesn't have to be disclosed. Everything else needs to be disclosed.
It's in a trust, that's in a savings account that relies on trustee though. so-
Yeah, exactly. The trustee has to sign off on it. Perfect example. Like that's a really, really good example of like why you need to get to know what the situation is because like you know it's my trust account. Okay. Is there a third party that has to agree to release that? Because if the third party says, no, you're not buying a house, you're not responsible to have a house, you're not buying it, then the sale fails because you can't get cash and you lose earnest money, right? Okay.
Sorry, is the lender already dealt with that and is telling you already everything? do I still have?
Absolutely, what
I
the
just
what the
wanna
lender
confirm
tells
it.
you is fine, but this is the contract, right? This is where, so real estate law, real estate statute of frauds, right? Which means, and it says everything must be in writing. So just because the lender said it, or the lender put it in a pre-approval letter, needs to go right. So we need to make sure their terms of agreement are all included on this purchase agreement. Anything, to make sure if there's a question like this that's asked, that we're giving a precise answer. Okay, does that make sense?
But do I need to ask the client again, even if I already know it?
Yeah, I would confirm it with
Absolutely
them.
confirm, because things change,
Absolutely.
things change too. Because like, what if they, since the lender first told you, what if they since have gotten that money put in their account and it's no longer contingent upon anything? Well, then you kind of wrote an offer that's not quite as strong as it could have been because we didn't ask the question, is where are the funds coming from? We could say, oh, I have the funds in my account. Good to go.
I had, with my first buyer, they did have a trust, and the trustee said, okay, moving it to a cash position, so what does that mean exactly? Just check it out.
I asked them, what does that mean?
What does
What does
that
that
mean?
mean?
Okay.
Yeah, what does that mean?
You guys are writing a very important offer. You need to have every single detail.
Yeah.
To make sure that you can do right by them on their offer.
Yeah.
They need to understand that.
Yeah.
Right?
Have you written an offer for someone that has like Dogecoin or Bitcoin?
I've not.
Not
I
yet.
have a friend who's like, yeah, my house is all this like Bitcoin I have. And I was like, I don't know like how that works, you
Right,
know?
so you can't purchase with crypto,
Yeah.
right?
Nope.
So he's got to convert it to cash,
Yep,
right?
so that would
So
be
right
okay.
there,
Okay. Would you ask them like, because have you dealt with someone who had money in the stock market?
mhm,
Do you ask them to take their money out like immediately?
I would, I mean, it's up to them, but I would tell them,
Especially with how volatile that is right now.
yeah, that's just with crypto.
Yeah.
I spent $300 on crypto like a month ago. I mean,
I've lost
I think
most
it's
of
up.
mine,
Yeah, I
right?
think I've lost most all of it, so,
Yeah.
so like, it's something you wanna,
Changes in a day.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
right.
Changes in a minute, actually.
Yeah, Okay.
So yeah, that would go up there.
yeah, no, really, it
Yeah.
is, it's crazy how, like, I've watched that Coinbase app, and it's crazy how much it fluctuates. Okay, so we got the personal property financing, so, if they're financing your property, if they were doing cash, we check in there. If it's financing, we're gonna check a box in here, okay? And typically, if it's like a jumbo loan, you might hit there, conventional, whatever. But that's where you're gonna address it, super important, because the difference between checking this box, FHA, and that box, conventional, is huge. Right, it's a big difference. In the appraisal process, in the qualifying process, in the repercussions, if the house doesn't appraise, it's really important, and we'll get
The
into more
seller
details about that.
accepting your offer.
Yeah, right, like, a conventional loan is so much more appealing to a seller than an FHA loan, because the appraisal process is different. Mostly the appraisal process.
And the timing,
What's that?
the timing to close.
Can be, right, because FHA appraisers get paid about half of what you pay a regular appraiser, so one, you're not getting the cream of the crop appraisers, and two, they back burner it, because it's like, they're gonna turn that thing in the last minute, because they're getting half of it.
And then VA appraisers have 10 business days to finish it. They're not
Yeah,
right.
they.
Not that they'll wait that long, some will, some won't,
Yeah.
but they have 10 full days, business days to complete it.
They're not getting paid the same amount, the feds don't pay it. It's funny, they don't pay a prevailing wage.
Imagine that.
Does that influence
Sorry,
that?
if I have a VA loan, then I need to make sure that the closing date is also more than 30 days.
Maybe.
Figure
Ask
30
questions
to-
the lender.
30 to
Question for the
45
lender.
days.
Find out from the lender, what can you do?
But
Is that less appealing for VA loan for a seller then, because it's gonna take longer?
Yeah, but a lot of times, not a lot of times,
Sometimes they like it
Yeah.
because they want to help the VA.
yeah, sometimes people are like, oh, this is
Or
a, like,
vet, sorry.
I'm always like that, I was always like, hey, it's a vet, like, we should look at this and consider this, it's a vet, you know? So,
You'd be turning me down. Do you want to turn me down or nothing?
you are a veteran.
I'm a disabled vet now.
So, sorry. I didn't cut you off. No, I wasn't trying to, I was just gonna call. Do they need help closing costs, with closing costs, so down here,
Put through the letter.
oh yeah, pre-approval letter,
Yep,
so,
and then financing contingencies.
All right, so because we're good agents and because we talk to our clients about getting things done ahead of time, so not scrambling at the last minute, we're always gonna keep checking this box, right? Buyer has to pass a copy of the pre-approval letter from buyer's lender, because we wanna make sure that when it's time to write an offer, we're not saying, oh, I'll give it tomorrow. Because tomorrow's not gonna come. Like, in a multiple offer situation, you need to have that pre-approval letter in hand, you have it ready to go, because if I've got two offers that are exactly the same, and one's got a pre-approval letter and one doesn't,
You know what you wanna do? You wanna make sure your lender's ready to call and solidify that offer.
Mhm.
Right? To say, I've heard more than once that an agent who has the lender call the listing agent to chat with them and tell them, yep, we've run them all the way through and they are good to go, we can close in 3 weeks. That means the world to the agent and the sellers. So be ready, have your lender
Mhm.
ready to
make
go.
that. What does that tell you as a listing agent? You pick up the phone, it's a lender calling you, how do you feel? Yeah, like that person's calling on Sunday, that's pretty cool. Yeah, they, not only that, they also know what's going on. If I'm talking to it, so. Yeah, you remember, rate your first impression here with the offer, so that's another big first impression when the lender, because the financing piece is like the biggest piece of this, like, that's the one that fails more times than not. I mean, we worry about inspections and stuff like that, we have some control over that. When it comes to the lender, we just absolutely have no control whatsoever, right? And so you wanna make sure that, one, you've teamed with a good lender as a buyer's agent. I have a closing, I just put a contract the other day, and when I met these people, they're friends of friends. And they said, oh, we just got pre-approved with America Home Funding out of Aurora. I'm like, I've never ever heard.
Oh,
I've never
I don't
heard of
care. Let me give you another one.
Yeah, I was like, I've never ever heard of them before. It's super competitive. You need to have like a lender that's recognizable, that I can like say for 100% certainty that this one's gonna close. I can't say that with American Home Funding out of Aurora, like I never. So, choosing right is really important.
But you can kind of coach them into maybe using your lender.
Yeah.
Because if you're,
Yeah,
it's not, it's
Totally.
really up to them, right? But it's just like you can.
Yeah.
help them.
totally.
Have
I-
multiple.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think you should have a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
Right, and a mortgage broker is like high service, you know, they're gonna pay a little bit more probably to close that loan, but the rate should be about the same. But they'll have a lot more products at their disposal. And then an institutional lender like B of A or Wells Fargo, and those are harder to find, someone you wanna work with. The problem with that process is it's really divided up, so the person who takes their loan application doesn't see the whole thing through. I mean, they may have some, like, they probably know what's going on, you hope, but they can't just walk over to the underwriter's office to get an answer. They've got to leave the underwriter a phone number, call, it's just much more complicated. It's a little bit cheaper though. So usually the closing costs are less with an institutional lender, like a big box, like, or Quicken Loans, or whichever. Please don't Rocket Mortgage, please don't.
If they're gonna go online for a loan, send them to Keller Mortgage.
Yeah, that actually is a really good idea,
Keller Mortgage.
because their closing costs will be really low.
Zero lender fees.
Yeah, and I think Keller.
And $1,000 credit at closing, appraisals ordered immediately.
And I think they do a good job.
Just did my social post.
Yeah,
Did it?
yeah, I think that would be, I think that's a really good idea, actually.
But
Good.
they can't do FHA loans, right?
Yeah,
Oh, they can?
yeah. They can do almost everything,
Mhm.
including refinance.
Mhm.
I had a friend that I just recently told to get pre-approved now, and like the next day told me that they had talked to like 20 lenders. Is there a problem with them going to that many, or is it?
Well, if they're all running title report, if they're all running credit
Throw in a
reports.
credit report, ding, ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding.
the credit.
It only
scores
goes a
dropping.
little bit, but that many goes ding, 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 right?
Yeah, I
Tell them to pick a couple and go with it,
yeah, that's,
right? Go with a local, like, go with a credit union, go with a big box, and maybe go with Keller Mortgage.
Mhm.
Or a mortgage broker, and that's it.
By
I mean,
bid box.
there's only, honestly, there's like 3 or maybe 5 mortgage brokers that I would ever work with. Like companies. Because the rest are just printing pre-approval letters, like, they're not really
Yeah.
doing their due diligence, they're just like,
Or,
hey,
credit score.
oh yeah, credit score, and you told me you made $150,000 a year.
I
Done.
believe you.
Yeah, but they didn't, and then once they looked at it, they're like, oh, wait, you're a 1099 employee, you actually only made $40,000, that's a big difference, right? So, this is like, choosing a lender is like, this is so important, it's so
You need to
important.
stop your 5.
What's that?
Maybe list it.
They're ready.
My five, Fairway, Academy, Guild, Directors.
Directors,
I'm
not heard
That's four. I can't name a fifth.
I use Caliber.
Caliber, people like Caliber.
Some people listen to Chicago.
Chicago was the Caliber.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be picky, like this is nitpicky, but the financial center of Portland is the Oswego. If they don't have office in the Oswego, I live there, but it sounds snooty, but like, it really is, like, if you're a serious mortgage company, you have an office in the Oswego.
One of the financing contingencies there, that little section, we need to know that, right?
Yeah, so this is, the basic boiler plate is if a buyer is financing any portion of the purchase price, then this transaction is subject to the following financial contingencies. One, the buyer and the property to qualify for the loan from lender. So that means, like if it's an FHA or even a conventionally loaned property, sometimes the appraiser will come out and they'll see something that scares them about the property. Let's say there's a big hole in it, or it doesn't have a heating source, the roof looks bad, FHA or DA, there's cracked paint, like there's a whole bunch of little things that could throw off a loan, a property qualifying for a loan. It's not common, more common with FHA and DA properties, but conventional is very uncommon with the property when qualify. But the property has to qualify for a loan too, right? This is not just the purchase price, but actually it's the structure itself, okay? And this isn't the home inspection, we're talking about this, it's just the appraiser's visit the house. He comes and he sees, something that would alarm him about the property. He may make it a part of the sale, like make it a subject to, like the loan would be approved subject to a lot line, discovering if the lot line's proper on the property as it is, or if the neighbor's house is encroaching on the property, or so there's little things that can pop up along the way that can make the house not qualify for a loan. So that's one of the contingencies, right? And then the buyer qualify, right? Okay. 2, lender's appraisal shall not be less than the purchase price. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? We have an addendum, an appraisal addendum, they can make adjustments to this term if we want. If you want to insure the appraisal for a certain amount, like conversation you have with your client, especially now, is like, okay, we're going over the offer price. If the house doesn't appraise, are you willing to bring extra money into closing to cover the gap? So that's a conversation you should all be having with your buyer clients, because if you're writing over asking price, that's almost certainly going to be part of the winning bid. Is there'll be some sort of assurance to the appraised value.
And then if they're not doing 20% down, talking with the lender and seeing if they can put more money down to lower their MIP, right, to be able to
Yeah, right. You can
To
mortgage
adjust.
insurance.
the appraisal.
How do people fund that extra appraisal gap typically? I mean, that.
Bring cash. It has to be
Cash.
Cash. But
The one I was actually sent you last week.
Yeah.
So that one, they were worried about, the property, they didn't have a fence.
Mhm.
Is that something that you ever address? Cause that's on someone else's property.
yeah, well, right, the fence is on the property.
Yeah.
It's their fence.
You couldn't like split it.
You could try.
Yeah.
In this real estate market, as competitive as it is, and almost not just this one, but a lot of market, almost any market. Like at some point, the cleaner the offer is, the better. So if your offer's, contingent upon them putting a fence in, you just put a lot of hair on the offer. Like it's gonna be, when I say the word hair, it's complications, right? So I say it's got hair on it, it's complicated. So you're complicating it by, so it's an old, I know it's an old thing, it's from my age here.
How old
But
are you?
I know, right? But it's hairy, so it makes it complicated. So you want to make offers as simple as it possibly be
Yeah.
for people. The more complicated, like if you have multiple offers, then the more complicated yours is, the less appealing it's going to be. If it's just a singular offer, if it's complicated, you may not be dealing with a really sophisticated person. The agent may be sophisticated, they may not. They may be sophisticated, but the buyer may. So simpler.
If right now, like in this market, and somebody trying to cover the appraisal gap in my head, like if they have more than 20% down, would you recommend possibly keeping, just doing 20% down and then putting a thing of addendum for an appraisal gap with the rest of the cash that they had on hand.
Yeah, that's smart.
You can always-
Because they can always, yeah, no seller's gonna care if you bring more money to closing, right? But if all of a sudden you bring less, and then you can't qualify for the loan, then you're gonna lose yours.
Yeah.
I'll
So you're saying versus saying, oh, we could put 30% down, just say 20.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
could, the flip side of that coin though would be is if there's multiple offers, sometimes that big time down payment looks
Makes
really
it-
attractive.
yeah.
I think if it was me representing a seller, I would be more impressed by the appraisal gap coverage than I would be a big down payment. Because it's more, I figure you're probably gonna qualify for your loan, but I'm really worried about is the house gonna qualify? Is it really gonna come in and appraise that? That's my biggest story. So I think that's a better technique, is holding back. So in here, we could say, for three other, we could see appraisal addendum, addendum to, I can't remember what it's written as. It's in the KW forms in your zip form accounts. I think it's in, Nina and I, we were doing this yesterday, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the appraisal addendum to residential real estate agreement, or something like that. You could put that there, or you could say, this sale is not contingent upon the appraisal of your property. And that would just mean that your clients are gonna cover whatever gap there is. But the appraisal value has nothing to do with the property at all. If it's a cash deal, again, it says if buyer is financing, there's cash, there's no appraisal.
Yeah.
For some reason.
So the reason you might not put this offer isn't contingent on the appraisal. The reason you might not put that is because you want to put a cap and do an addendum instead, is because you want to put a
No,
cap
it's
on how
because-
much you'll cover.
No, it's because you're saying, I don't care what appraisal is for,
Right,
I'm gonna pay for whatever it is. Yeah,
right.
you don't want to cap.
But if you don't want to, leave yourself open to maybe,
You wanna put a cap on it?
yeah, if
Then
you
you
want to
would
put
use
a
the
cap
appraisal
on it, then
addendum
you do
you
the
do.
addendum.
Exactly, yep. Yeah, but you limit your exposure to what you have in hand.
Are we having this as a proof of funds with those or like?
No, it's not really called for. There's no, like, if it was a cash offer, then yes, you would have to submit your funds, like a proof of funds, that would be agreeable to the seller. They have a period of time to agree what he's presented. But, it's weird. I think it should be, like, in Washington, there's a form for that. Oregon's just a little different, they can't take the word for it. If you misrepresented it, it's fraud, so.
Right.
That's probably not a jail term, that's probably a mistake, but could be.
It's like terrifying if you don't put a cap on it.
Yeah, well, it is scary, right?
$100,000,
Like,
let's let me-
yeah, totally. Well, here's a scenario. So, I don't care what, how are we gonna talk?
15 minutes.
Okay, so here's a scenario we had earlier this year. Our buyer won the bid on a house, and he said, no appraisal, no appraisals, no, it's not contingent upon the appraisal. We're not gonna ask for any repairs, but he still did his inspection. So, and he had a lot of cash. So he had like $1 million cash. He's gonna finance the house that was like $800,000. He's gonna put as much down, as little down as he had to. But his problem is he came back and he had the inspection done, and he found that a bunch of windows needed to be replaced, some siding needed to be replaced, and the sewer line went from the street to the backyard, did a quick little 180-degree turn, and then went down to the basement. It was a really messed up configuration for a sewer line. And so he was like, and it was also under a drive, it was under a pad, it was under a sidewalk, and then under a retaining wall to the street. So repairing that sewer line could have been $50,000 easy, not $80, really, really expensive. So he's sitting here looking at his deal, he's like, well, I thought I was gonna use my cash to fix the house up, but now I might be just using my cash to fix the windows and the sewer line, which really, it's not very sexy, you know, when you're fixing up the house, like, you don't get any more enjoyment from having your windows not leak, except for they're not leaking, you know, they're still, it wasn't looking at it visually. So he terminated the sale, so.
Did he lose his earnest money?
No, because we had written it, so he wasn't gonna ask for repairs, but he still maintained his inspection continuously. Yeah, I always get nervous when people, and I see a lot of funny ways people write it, like buyers shall not repair, like buyers shall ask for no repairs. Okay, that's okay, right? But I see every once in a while I see buyer inspection for informational purposes only. Well, in my mind, that completely eliminates the inspection contingency, the
Yeah.
inspection period, it's gone. They can inspect it, but they can't ask for anything.
They can't.
They basically just said, we're just doing it for this reason only. And I think that nullifies. the
Don't write
inspection
it that way.
Never write that.
Write it where they don't lose their earnest money.
Yeah, you would just say, buyer shall not ask for any repairs, if you want to take it the next step, say, buyer shall not ask for any repairs or concessions. Based upon the home inspection? Yeah, that would protect them, that doesn't change their right to unconditional use approval.
Oh.
Ready?
We're gonna skip over 7 because no one's winning offers right now with closing costs, with very few, but it's probably a conversation to have. They need to make sure in Oregon is different than a lot of other states. In Oregon, closing costs paid by the seller, we're really common, but it's not so competitive that no one's doing it.
You don't see that right now.
Yeah.
Learn it.
It will come back, when the market's back out, I don't know if there's like a class that every agent, every mortgage broker in Oregon went to that said, use closing costs like this, but I just know in other states, it's not as prominent as it is here. It's weird, but anyways, okay. What type of inspections do they want for the home? Right, this is an important conversation. If it's an older home over on the east side of town, do they want to do a tank search? Look for an oil tank, because if they buy a home with an oil tank, and they go to sell it someday, if it's an older home, if it's, let's say it's that home built in 1920 over on the east side of town, anywhere in town. If they don't do the home, if they don't search for an oil tank, the next buyer who buys their house is definitely gonna search for an oil tank.
And now they're paying for it.
And they're gonna pay for it, if it shows up, it's really expensive to decommission an oil tank. So something they want to search for.
The best way to know, because you guys are like, I don't know what inspections, right? So you're gonna come down here and you're gonna check other inspection addendum, and you're gonna go get the inspection addendum, because it has everything. Okay, sorry.
It's got a long list, right?
So there's the OREF form right here. And then you go grab that and add that form, and it has everything on there.
And we'll go through that when we fill it out.
Mhm.
This is, you have to ask this question, but look in the RMLS, make sure if it's on septic or well, make sure you're checking these boxes because it triggers.
Yeah, these are questions you need to ask your
Yeah.
buyer.
I'm moving, I just checked, I can't help it.
No, that's okay. Just, that's why these are here, and we're not asking every little thing on there. The rest of it you can find on RMLS,
Okay,
right?
yes. Okay, number 9, do they want a home warranty? That's a good question to ask.
How do you
It's
feel?
not as common right now, right?
Because of buyer's agents, I actually bought one for my buyers.
That's a nice little added bonus.
We had up to $10,000 inspection issues we wouldn't ask for.
Yeah.
It's definitely had some stuff, so
Yeah.
I bought them a warranty, they've already used it like 3 times.
There you go.
That's great, it works.
Just in March.
She just earned clients for life.
Beware though, sometimes the home warranty company isn't as excited to pay out those things as you might think they'd be.
Actually, it's very true.
Right, so if you're saying instead of doing $10,000 repair, I'm gonna spend $600 on a home inspection, on a home warranty, it may not be a like for like swap. So preface it, make sure that you're having an explanation. Yeah, it's a home warranty, it's an insurance policy, they are a company, they would prefer not to pay out. They prefer to take the $600 and never talk to you again, so you
Until
may
the
have
year is
to.
up.
Yeah, right, until the years of going.
You go tell them about this if you do the home warranty before you get the inspection in, or, because they wouldn't.
You did after.
I contacted the warranty company right away as soon as the offer was accepted and said that I'm gonna do this, and of course, you're not paying, it's not official until it closes. So yeah, they still did inspection and everything, but I just had a feeling that it might be useful, and then sure enough, they put that in for.
Yeah.
They did get kind of, I mean, insurance company or warranty company did kind of screw them over on that, and ended up with $1,000. but
Some of them
still
have a
$1,000
max that they'll pay on things, though.
Yeah,
They'll have a max that they pay on HVAC, a max they pay on appliances.
But it helps.
Yeah.
They needed, they
Yeah.
had plumbing issue after that, so getting something.
If you don't check this box, then you add them there.
you could buy them
Yes.
for them, yeah, you could buy, this is more to do with, it's a good message to the title company if it's gonna be paid out of closing costs or something like that.
If you're halfway through the transaction and your buyer wants to buy one, or you wanna buy one, you can just call escrow and have them add it,
Yeah.
cause the seller's not paying for it,
They don't get
so
I
it
mean,
doesn't need to
yeah,
be.
I mean, you could make a point that if you're a buyer's agent, you wouldn't want to disclose, and you plan on negotiating repairs, you can make it a point that like, hey, I don't actually want to disclose that because if the seller's agent knows that we have that, they just might say, here's your home warranty, you're buying it.
Yeah.
Like, so they could, and then once they say that to you, you're kind of like, what's your response to that? Like, I hope they cover it. I mean, like, I don't know if you're gonna cover it, like, I don't, you're not negotiating from a real strong perspective.
Right, I can put it in for him.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Yeah.
And then told us to.
Right, so it's paid at closing.
But it's all in the presentation. Flip side of that would be, if you're in a multiple offer situation, you can say, hey, I'm giving them the home warranty, so if something comes up on the repair addendum, we're covered, like you could. Right, so if you're trying to make your offer more attractive, just depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
Do you have home warranty companies that you trust?
No. I don't. So, yeah, some people love, First
Old
American,
Republic is a really.
Old Republic has one.
I'm sorry.
Old Republic,
Almost every title company has a
Fidelity has
relationship.
one, and there's multiple.
They all have relationships with them, and they're all very similar, I think.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're all around the same cost. The only difference might be the fee that they charge to come out every single time. Some, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they might all be around that
I mean, it's-
75, 80 now.
It's true with homeowners insurance, it's true with auto insurance, that some companies have a better history of covering claims than others do.
Yeah.
And that does differentiate.
And I don't know, I
But not with
honestly,
this
I don't know if
one?
there's been a study done that I
Okay.
have access to, I don't know.
Talk to the reps, they'll tell you the best.
So yeah, they will. And I, like, there's some agents that love them. There's agents that absolutely love home warranties. I'm just not.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I do, and this is why, I'm a control freak and I don't want some of my client's opinion of me to be reflected upon the service somebody else gives. So if I'm referring somebody, I wanna make sure they're getting, like, my mortgage broker, Buffy, she's amazing. I refer her all day long, every day. And I wouldn't think twice about it, and I know that they'll get better service from Buffy than they get from me, right? That's the standard that I've set. And I don't want to send anybody out, anybody to my, I want to refer anybody to my client for a service. So, because I don't want to look bad. I look bad enough, I don't need anybody helping me out. So,
All right, well, 5 minutes.
okay. When do they want to close? Right, so in this market, probably close date is as soon as possible. And in this market, the possession date may be an entirely different date as well.
What's the really important thing you should do when you look at closing dates? They say, oh, I don't know, let's close August 21st. Is that a weekend? Is it a holiday? Because you're not closing on those days.
Mhm.
Make sure you pull up a calendar and look.
If it's in Clackamas County and you're trying to close on a Friday, it's gotta be done before noon.
Probably won't happen.
Okay.
Close on a Thursday.
It's Clackamas County title, the quarters office closes, so.
Kills me when I
On
see
Friday.
one that's on a Sunday. I'm like, really?
Yeah, can do it.
Where's the best day of the week to close though, right? Isn't it?
I like
feel
Wednesdays,
that-
Wednesdays or Thursdays, because you have a couple days in front, a couple working days ahead of time, and a couple working days afterwards in case something doesn't happen. And that way they can get on the weekend. You'll find a fastidious buyer, they'll be like, I don't wanna pay for a house I'm not moving into for 2 days, you know, it's like, look, if you miss your close date, you're gonna wish you had those 2 days to move in on the weekend, as opposed to not closing on Friday and then closing on Monday, and then
Yeah.
not gonna move in for a week, so,
Build in some motion.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And closing dates are like, I wouldn't say that they miss them all the time, but I would say 25% of the sales end up having
Oh.
a change in,
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's a huge number.
Oh, yeah. It's usually the lender.
And it's usually the lender, yeah.
Yeah.
99% of the time it's the lender. The rest is like probably repairs that don't get done maybe, or something, but it's usually the lender. Again, that's why it's important to choose a lender that can hit their dates, because from representing your client, like they've planned their entire week around moving to this house, maybe their entire month. They might be moving from back east, and you think of all the implications of planning to move into a house on a day.
Moving trucks.
Moving trucks, and how much it could cost them not to hit that date. It's a lot of money. So that's when I'm talking to my client, my buyer clients about, you know, do you want to go work with Buffy at Northwest, at Guild Mortgage, or do you want to go work with Quicken Loans? The cost associated with missing your close date could be far more than what you save in closing costs by working with a mortgage broker as opposed to going with the big box lender. So, yeah, Like Quicken, like the Rocket Mortgage, that is a farce. I've done 2 of them, and neither one of them closed on time, right? And so and it costs them a lot of money. They can hit the close date, the seller could decide that they don't actually want to sell it to you anymore. They just like, you know what? No, I changed my mind. I have a backup offer, and they're paying $20,000 more than your clients are, and you missed your close date, so hope you have fun on the next one. Here's your earnest money back, and I'm gonna sell these people instead.
The lesson I had at my first one too was close date doesn't mean that they necessarily sign.
Yes,
They might sign a day before or 2 days
That's right.
before.
almost always.
Always.
I alert.
There's a term called,
Maybe, but I almost missed that.
yeah, you wanna ask, one of the things you wanna ask as you get closer to closing date is, do you table fund? That means that as soon as the client sign and they get the documents back, they fund it. The lender will fund it,
That's a
so
whole nother class.
it's a whole new class, sorry. Okay, all right.
All right.
Possession,
Yeah.
this is the most important, this is huge, right? So if we're gonna not do this, we're gonna use this or this, then we're absolutely going to present our offer with OREF 053. Absolutely, okay? Because that dictates the terms of the occupancy agreement, and those terms are germane to the sale, so if you don't have those,
9854.
54, sorry,
We wanna occupy, sellers wanna occupy
after,
after.
that's a whole,
What line is that?
line, it's
382 is
Section
where it
31.
starts.
I'm sorry,
section 31, line
Line
382 to
32.
384.
okay, thanks.
Agreement to occupy after.
So if you have an agreement, like seller initials this, goes to the end and signs and agrees to it, but you don't have this done, you don't have a sale.
That's right.
This is material to the sale, you don't have a meeting of the minds, so it's avoidable, it's avoidable until that gets done. You don't wanna wait till the last time, you wanna have that thing presented with your offer.
The only time that would change is if something happened in the middle of the transaction, and now you have an addendum that states, please see addenda,
Yeah.
or please see the agreement to occupy after closing.
Right, or it could change, you would amend it, this would be it.
Yep.
But if you're getting out, if when the deal's agreed to and occupancy isn't at the closing date, then you need to use that form absolutely.
So if it's not written on the third,
If you aren't checking, if you're not checking that box right there, then you're using this form right there.
but if I use one, then I don't need that.
Yeah.
Right. If the seller's not staying after we close, then you don't need the form,
And so
because there is no buyer occupying prior.
after this gets signed by
Okay.
both parties, that's it, pretty much then, as long as everyone keeps their word and everything goes smoothly, like this is what binds the sale or the.
This is, yeah,
Yes, this
Yep.
binds the sale together.
and subsequent events.
Yeah.
But nothing changes until, once this is signed and agreed to, nothing changes until we amend. If we,
So I've had contracts where the buyer wants to leave the possession date flexible as a negotiating tool.
Mhm.
How would you recommend?
you just put a date out there ways, as far out as you can, as far as the form allows, which I think is 90 days. You could go as far as that and then amend it later.
However, some lenders won't let you go more than 60.
True.
No.
Anything after 90 days, one, lender won't do it. Two, now it's not an occupancy agreement, now it has to be a lease agreement, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And that's not what we do, we don't do leases, so.
Well, they don't officially become a tenant at all. So
It's silly, so they don't become a tenant at all until we go after 91 days, or they stay after it's supposed to. Now they're a tenant, it's super messy. But we're using it all the time, it's hard to get away from. I think we're gonna continue to use them, they're great alternatives to contingent, right, to purchase agreements, so when the market goes down, I think people have gotten so used to using that form, that they'll continue to use it for other purposes as well.
it's really about just you're giving them free rent back, but at that period, you know, if they're not out by this day, and they're gonna charge this much money just as, you know, more incentive to get out, and if they won't get back, why aren't you bought yet? Aren't you gonna move out?
Right.
Right.
That's the argument I would make, is like,
Yeah.
but again, everything's equal, like, unfortunately, terms dictate the competitive, the market, how competitive it is, to dictate what terms you get to to write into your deal, or at least the ones that would be acceptable. So I'm with you, like, I would be like, let's make this as strong as possible, because you're gonna move out, so it's a big deal, right? It's not gonna happen, but you will get the one off, it's like, oh, no, I don't like that, we're not gonna. Then you may not wanna buy it, because it could be huge. Yeah. And we have one
Back to
more.
the deed.
Oh, yep, back to the, we already covered this, is the name that they would be taking title under, so that would be if it's a company or if it's a trust or anything but their name, as you've written it on the first one.
And if there is a trust or a business or whatever it is that's purchasing it, do they have the documents that show who can sign?
Mhm.
Title will need that.
Mhm.
So if they trigger any of those titles or businesses or whatever it is, that's your first question. Do you have authorization to sign for that? And do you have the legal document stating that?
So documents basically what's notarized.
It's recorded. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a company, they'll have articles of incorporation, and they'll have a thing, they'll have check documents that you can sign. And it's so funny, like the first time I saw one of these, like I was like, this is the form, this is just like a piece of paper that says you can sign, like this is the most unofficial thing I've ever seen in my life. But it does the job, so.
So where do we check that? Is it like Chamber of Commerce? Where do
No,
we-
you're just gonna ask.
Title will. You ask the buyer or your seller, actually, especially on sales, so that'll be a whole other class,
Yeah.
right? But you ask your buyer if they say it's gonna be in a trust, or they say they're buying it with their business name, or whatever it is, you need to know that they have the document that states who signs,
Yeah.
who has authorization
Yeah.
to
So,
purchase under
I would
that
know.
name.
And we don't verify that somewhere?
You don't need to verify it, if they tell you, just go off the website.
Yep, and just let them know that title will be needing that document.
Yeah,
Or then the title will take care
right, well, they'll have to provide us with that.
of that.
We're not gonna verify that, it's not our job to verify that. Escrow just don't wanna see a document that says they can do that, they're not gonna go follow up on
And that name has to be the same as who's writing the offer.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly
Yeah.
the same.
it. We had one the other day, a couple weeks ago, where it was a corporation buying a piece of property, and the guy last year was a registered signer with the company, but since he wasn't, when they made a change and whatever, he wasn't actually a registered signer, so we had to create an addendum after the fact that said, hey, this is such and such is an authorized signer in this case, or we just had such and such, as we had another party come through and sign everything, who could sign, this is a corporation buying a piece of property. So we just had to sign all the paperwork after that, it was fun.
I just took a class on this through Ticor, they're saying you have to sign, basically client's name as trustee of trust name. Like, obviously.
Yeah, there's a whole nother way of signing it too.
I don't think, they say that, I don't follow that for a second, because your signature could be, my signature is completely, right, completely illegible. So it's let me, I guess on the printed name at the beginning where you're disclosing who the parties are, that could be a spot where maybe that's supposed to go. But intent, we're getting a contract law here, but intent is important. And so if the person who's authorized to sign and purchase under, such and such name has signed it, then the intent was him for that person to purchase the property. And that's easy to, like, intent is really easy to prove in a case like that. Like we can write a contract on a napkin, as long as both parties sign it and agree to it, then we have a contract. So it'll have to be sort of formal. Intent is important.
All right,
Any other questions?
Thursday,
Oh, yeah,
we'll be coming in, writing an actual offer. We're gonna pull up an arm left sheet, and you guys are gonna write an offer on it. Okay,
You said this is in Slack now, or?
it will be after this class, yeah.
How do we get to that?
How do you get to the contracts?
it's in zip forms.
We'll get you there on Thursday. If you're not connected yet, stop by and see Austin.
Yeah, get into zip forms as soon as you can, guys. Because you don't want to have to be doing it last week. Get into zip forms.
Okay, Austin, we're done.
Thank you all.
Okay.